The Bobby O Show.
Welcome to the Bobby O Show. This is Bob Opatzner. I'm here today with a show which I think is very important in light of certain issues in our country today. We have a problem in our country, unfortunately, which we're all aware about, which is protecting the rule of law. I always grew up from a little boy. My father was Republican. I'm a Democrat. My father passed away as a person who loved the Republican Party from years ago. But he always instilled in me that the rule of law is critical. We must follow the law. And also, nobody is above the law. Unfortunately, we're seeing in our society now that our former president, Donald Trump, is trying to test the issue of what the rule of law is. He's attempting to show that the laws that apply to everyone else don't apply to him. We have investigations being performed by Congress trying to investigate the New York state attorney, the Georgia state attorney, and that's not the way we grew up. That's not our society. The rule of law is critical, and the rule of law starts at the grassroots level. And that's why today I'm having a show involving two members of the Richfield Police Commission. I've invited Issy Caporale and Ralph Money to talk about the basic grassroots of police enforcement and following the rules and following the law. Issy, Ralph, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
For inviting.
Gentlemen and lady, I would like to start out with having both of you give us about a minute and a half or so. We won't clock it. Talk about what your background is and what your role is, and we'll later on get into what the police commission does. But I want to know about you personally and professionally. Tell us about yourselves. Issy, you go first, please.
Sure. Again, thank you for inviting me. My name is Issy Caporale. I'm a townie. I grew up in Richfield. My parents moved here in 1961, so I was very small. And I served in the military for 25 years in the Coast Guard. So I was all over the world pretty much and enjoyed every minute of it. I was in communications, and also I did a lot of search and rescue. Very, very little law enforcement because that's like a special operation, but I did a lot of search and rescue. I retired from the military, and I worked at the Richfield Police Department for 11 years. I was a dispatcher there, which I enjoyed very much. So there was a lot of camaraderie that was there also, like it was in the military, working with the men and women of the police department. It was, a little difficult in the beginning because, police officers, they don't know you well enough, and they got to make sure that they trust you enough. So it took a couple of years to really get their trust. But once I had their trust, it was great. It was really great. So they knew that when I was giving them information on whatever kind of incident happened, they knew that I was giving them all the information that I could possibly give. I love this town. I came back to this town. I'm now retired. I am an official or referee for women's lacrosse and field hockey. I do youth all the way up to college. I enjoy that. It keeps me busy. I think I'm more busy now than I ever was, from just working. But I'm enjoying my time to myself. I have a 94-year-old mother who, thank God, is in good shape, and taking care of her and making sure that this town continues to stay safe and continues to take care of our youth and our seniors and everybody else that's in town.
Thank you, Issy. Ralph?
Yes, thanks, Bob. I'm a native of Connecticut. I grew up in Bridgeport. I lived in Fairfield, and for the last 13 years, I've lived here in Ridgefield. My background is twofold. One, a significant amount of nonprofit executive work, including for the American Red Cross, where I was responsible for a number of chapters and disaster relief administration. With the Red Cross, I was assigned to positions in Boston. I was chief of staff to the president of the Red Cross in Washington, D.C., and served as the chief operating officer of the American Red Cross in the San Francisco Bay Area. And through my Red Cross work, I became very familiar with emergency management and the interactions with police departments, fire departments, emergency medical services. The other part of my career was one of finance and investments. The last 23 years, I've been affiliated with an organization called Common Fund, where I worked in helping manage the endowments of hundreds of universities across the country. And it was a privilege to do that. Today, I'm honored to serve on the Police Commission, and we'll talk more about that. I serve as a member of the Ridgefield Volunteer Fire Department, and I'm an emergency medical technician, EMT, volunteering in Easton. So that's just a quick background on me, Bob.
Ralph and Issy, I grew up in Shelton, Connecticut, not far from Fairfield. My mother was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, by the way. My wife taught at Andrew Ward High School in Fairfield, which you may have attended. I don't know if you did or did not, Ralph. But I grew up with respect for the police officer. And my first recollection of police, I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I found like $7 on a street. So what did I do with it? I ran to the police department, which is about a mile from my father's local business, and went to the police officer, and he took the $7 and took me to an ice cream shop and bought me an ice cream cone that probably cost a quarter in those days. And I was thrilled. And from that day, police officers to me meant the world. Now, it may sound like a silly story to you guys, but that's my involvement with the police as a young child. And I think how people interact with the police department at the first go round is important, how they develop respect and appreciation for the department. Regrettably, I don't think police officers get the respect that they deserve in 2023 as they used to have. I'd like to have both of you comment about that, whether you think police officers are underappreciated or not, and if they are, what can be done to make police officers get the respect that I grew up with a 6-year-old kid getting an ice cream cone to now. I'll give that to Ralph first if you want to go after that one.
Sure. For me, it's also personal. One of my aunts, my godmother, was one of the first women state troopers in the state of Connecticut. So, growing up as a kid playing with the two-way radio in her car, I remember with fondness, and her colleagues on the state police as just extraordinarily gifted members of the community statewide. I add to that my work with the American Red Cross, where I've seen firsthand the work of our local police forces helping in the community after times of disaster. I think here in Ridgefield, we might be particularly unique in that in our town, Bob, the respect of our officers is quite different than what we might see nationally. And I think it has a lot to do with the leadership of our chief and the members of the department who are truly community police officers, which means they get out of their patrol cars, they meet the neighbors. They get out of the patrol cars and they're in the schools. They're meeting local business owners on Main Street and on Danbury Road. So they're part of the fabric of our community, and I think leads to a high level of respect. Nationally, we see a different story, unfortunately, but I think here in our community, it's quite favorable. Issy?
Yeah. I definitely would have to agree with Ralph. When I was growing up, my parents were from the Bronx, and we used to go down there all the time. My parents always used to say to me, if you ever get lost, go to a police officer. Just go and tap them on, or, nudge their pants. And, because I was tiny and I always used to want to wander. But I feel I definitely agree with Ralph that our department is an extraordinary department. I'm not saying we're perfect, but we are really good with working together, working with any kind of situation that comes up. And it does start from the top when it comes to the chief. He's an incredible chief. He knows what he's doing. He works with the officers all the time, and he's just really, really good. And when it comes to outside of our little bubble of Richfield, I feel it's such a shame that the officers are looked down upon. Now, like I said before, there are officers that are not the best, but I would say overall we have some great officers out there, and I feel that they're getting a bad rap because the good ones, I mean, you always hear about the bad ones, but there's more good ones than there are bad ones. And I hope that can change. But as far as Richfield, I think they're great.
It's interesting when someone who complains about the police officer sometime, if they get someone to break into their house, who do they call first? Police.
Exactly.
You get in a car collision, who do you call first? The police. And so I agree with you 100%, Izzy, in the point of, well, every profession. I just came out of a session, a 2-hour continuing education program that lawyers take every year, two hours a year we take on ethics. And every profession has people who are wonderful, 95, whatever percent you want to throw on it. Yeah. But people tend to look at the negatives. And we mentioned about the interaction with the police officers. When I was on the Board of Ed, my first term in Richfield was 1997. We had the DEAR program, which I think they still have. And I found that to be a very good program. Police officers got to know the kids, et cetera. In fact, one time my son was a football player, a senior, and my son was a very good kid. And the DEAR officer said, "Hey, Matt, I hear you might go to this party tomorrow night." "Well, yeah, I might go." The officer said, "Matt, don't go to that party. I heard some things that may not be so good, and your father will kick your butt." Yeah. My son didn't go, and there was a big party, and about 4 kids got arrested. And I thanked the officer when I found out about the whole situation, because that's what you want. You want interaction. Izzy, talk to me a little bit about what is the police commission? What does the police commission in Richfield do?
Well, our main job is to oversee the police department. I mean, we are the chief of police. We're his boss, but we don't look at it that way. We treat Jeff as he is the ultimate, because he knows what's going on inside the department. I mean, I used to work there, so I know the ins and outs pretty much of the department now. Things have changed, and it has changed for the good, but there's still things that I do know about it. I feel that when it comes to, tell me the question again. I'm sorry, I just lost train of thought. I apologize.
What the role of the police commission is?
The police commission, what we do, like I said, is oversee the department. We take care of when it comes to traffic or signs or hiring or possibly firing. Thank God I've never been involved with that. Any kind of issues that come up with the town when it comes to roads or lights, we deal with all of that. Traffic. There's quite a few different things that we work with and deal with.
I had not been to a police commission meeting, I don't think, in my life. Maybe once I went to a meeting, but I knew I was going to do a show on the police commission in Richfield. So I decided to go to a meeting at the police commission on September 20th. There were going to be 5 or 8 people there. It was in the building where the Board of Education used to meet when I was on the Board of Ed. And I walk in the room, I was about 20 minutes late, and there were not 5 or 8 people there. There were about 105 people in the room. I happened to go to the meeting when the big discussion was occurring about the LGBTQ, I call it sidewalk, crosswalk, rainbow issue. And I must tell you, I know some of the other members on the board. I knew John Fry, who's the chairman. I know Sharon Dornfeld, who's a lawyer I worked with over the years. And I must say, I was very impressed with the way you all handled as a board the issue that was somewhat controversial. There was a lot of passion, and that's good to have audiences and constituents who have passions. But I'd like you to tell me, Ralph, just a little bit about what that issue was, and we'll get to Izzy about how it was resolved.
Yeah, so at the macro level, there's a national concern and a national interest in being inclusive, being an open community, welcoming all. And across the country, the community has begun putting rainbow crosswalks to represent inclusion and sensitivities and respect for the LGBTQ plus communities. And here in Connecticut, almost a dozen cities and towns have such what they call pride crosswalks. And the Ridgefield Pride Committee went in front of the Board of Selectmen and then later in front of the Board of Police Commission to request identification of a municipal crosswalk that can be painted with the pride colors. So the meeting you attended, that came up, and a decision was made to indeed add a pride crosswalk in town. It ended up being a large, visible, town-owned driveway crosswalk as opposed to a formal street crosswalk. But it's a beginning. So, in the sense of inclusiveness, as well as safety, the commission moved forward to allowing that in its capacity as the town's line, sign, and traffic authority. Izzy can add a bit more color to it, but that's kind of the fact set behind it and where we ended up.
Izzy, do you have anyone to add? I have a follow-up question for you in this regard. But if you want to say something
I do. I mean, I feel that when they came to us and, our big thing as a group is safety. Safety is always a big thing, just like when I'm on the field, it's safety, taking care of the girls. So, I mean, Elisa did so much work. She had so much background, and to me, there was no question that there was no safety issues. And I thought that where they wanted it was right next to, where they painted it. I really didn't think there was no issues with that. And that's why I went and I voted for them to have it where they wanted to. Unfortunately, between the five of us, three did not feel that way.
Three police commissioners. Three commissioners.
Yes, three. I'm sorry. The three police commissioners did not feel that way. A couple of them were going with, the chief, and his background of, following rules. And even though the book that he came up with it was from 2009, it was an older book, but he still follows the book. And I have no disrespect for chief and following the rules. But as you know, Bob, you were there. I said, you know what, in the military, I had to follow the rules too, but I was talked to. Go ahead.
Let me follow up on that, just because some of the audience doesn't know what the facts you're talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think what Izzy's talking about, and this is going to be a question I was going to ask, the chief, who I had not met before, I was very impressed because the chief spoke, and I got there a little bit late, but he was finishing up his speech as I got there, and I read the minutes of the meeting, and he indicated that this a crosswalk with the rainbow color that's going to be on it may not have been directly allowed by certain rules that police commissioners have to follow or police officers have to follow in terms of putting things in crosswalks. And I respected the fact that he knew the crowd was in favor of doing the activity, which was intended to show that Richfield welcomes everybody. It was supposed to be a positive situation to say, you know what, in this day and age, the LGBTQ community is being disrespected. And we let people know when you come to our town, you're respected. So the chief, having known that, spoke and said, well, even though that's the case, I think it's not the rules that we should follow. You in your presentation said, well, sometimes you have to bend the rules. And it made me think about a book I read many years ago, by Abe Fortas, who was a great constitutional lawyer who wrote a book called Civil Disobedience. And essentially the theme was that sometimes the law may be where it is, but should we be changing the law? And you made the interesting comment, Izzy, and you said what I was going to ask you about, which is you said sometimes you have to bend the rules. Now, what your committee did was after you decide to vote for a different location for this welcoming activity, you asked the Board of Selectmen, who have the power in Richfield, to come up with rules and regulations that indicate when can you deviate from the rule book that the chief was talking about, so that we could say it's not because I like apples and you like oranges, as a bad hypothetical, but there's got to be rules as to why you say apples and why you say oranges. And so I thought that was a well done activity by the commission with a very difficult issue to deal with. And when you said that you wanted to bend the rules a little bit, I just want to give you a chance to say, when you say bend the rules, did you have some ideas in mind as to, you're not bending it because it's Bobo Potsner or because it's Ralph Bunny, but are you bending rules maybe because of a philosophical, intellectual, legal perspective? I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I want to give you a chance to lay out the groundwork.
Well, I felt, like I said, with being in the military for so many years, you have to follow the rules. But I also had quite a few supervisors through the years that I've looked up to and learned from as I went through my Coast Guard career. And what I felt was, and even quite a few of them said to me, is you got to follow the rules, but you can bend the rules a little bit if it doesn't hurt anyone or anything. So I went with that when and I looked to Jeff, the chief, and I looked to him and I told him, with due respect, because I totally respect Jeff, I said to him, yes, I agree with following the rules, but I understand the bending of them a little bit. And what I looked at it as, since there really wasn't any safety issues involved with that, that's where I felt that the bend could be there. And unfortunately, it wasn't looked upon to be in the place where they really wanted it, but we got somewhere. And I know the kids were disappointed, and we talked to the kids, or I said something to the kids, and I said, look, we may not have gotten this spot that you want, but you know what? We've got something, and that's a step in the right direction. So
I think I just want to give you the opportunity to explain it, and I respect totally what you were saying, and I was not asking you in a methodology of disagreeing. I just wanted to give you a chance to hear it, but I want to go to the next topic because you are running out of time a little bit.
Okay.
Of course, in my preparation for the meeting, I read your minutes for the last several meetings, read your agenda, and I almost fell out of my chair when I read agenda for the last night's meeting, Thursday, October 12th, and there was a topic called old business. And I would call this not old business. I'd call it ancient business, not being flipped, called 5B, as in boy, public safety building update. And I kind of got floored because my last year in the Board of Education in Richfield was 2003. After 15 years, I had enough. My kids are getting older and I want to be more at home. And I said, wait a minute. I think back in the early 2000s, there was discussion about replacing our facility in Richfield, which, let's be candid, fellas and lady, it's outdated. Okay. Danbury I'm in my office in Danbury now. It's down the street, brand new facility. Brookfield's got a new facility. What's going on in Richfield? We can't afford a new building, Ralph. What's going on, my friend?
Well, I think we're at a fulcrum moment in our community where there's a much broader appreciation and understanding that the two main public safety facilities in town today, the fire headquarters and the police headquarters, have overserved their useful life by probably a couple of decades. So just a handful of years ago, town leaders did an exhaustive study of potential properties where we could co-locate both the police headquarters and fire headquarters in one unified public safety facility. And they chose a town-owned property to do that. So it's not as if the town has to go out and buy the property. The driver of the need is the two buildings today don't serve the town needs today. They were built literally over 100 years ago. One's an old mansion, one's an old firehouse. In the case of the firehouse, the garages can't be built any taller. So as a result, the town and our taxpayers have to pay a higher amount to buy shorter fire trucks, believe it or not. So, and the police headquarters, again, the cost to maintain and operate both facilities, heating, lighting, fuel, etc., is ridiculous. So I think the needs of the town have grown. The facility needs to follow that. We're at a good point budget-wise, where if we need to borrow a few dollars, not for property, but to create such a facility, we can now do that to better serve the town. And I think it's, the entire Board of Police Commissioners have supported that and are now making a little bit more noise to advance the cause. And let's get some shovels in the ground.
Well, you have my vote for new facility because it's well needed, well timed. Izzy, do you have a quick comment on that, or is Ralph?
No, I totally agree because I remember working there and being in the dispatch room. Underneath my feet, there was like a little area where I put my feet, and there was wires all over the place. I mean, thousands of wires all over the place, and it was just. I feel it was just the house itself is just gorgeous. It was a beautiful house, but not for what we need to do. And having a new facility has been spoken for many, many years. And I know at one point one of the chiefs was not for it, and he kept pulling it off. And finally, I think with Jeff knows that we need a new department. And having a dispatch now that are together, we have the fire and the police that are together, so that makes a huge difference. So we're getting closer.
And by the way, I want to thank your officers because I didn't realize this. I have a grandson now who's 19 months old, and we got our car seat that the police department put the car seat in for us to make sure we did it correct. I forget the officer's name, and I'm mad at myself for not knowing his name, but I pulled in that little garage that you have there, and I said, holy cow, this is a pretty small garage. You guys need a bigger garage. But I want to thank you guys for fixing my son's car seat. We have about 2 minutes left in the show. I understand you fellows are both, Izzy and Ralph, you're both having your terms expire now, and you're both up for re-election. I want to give you guys both, and lady, both a 1 minute time or less to just say why you think you should be on the Police Commissioners Board another term. Izzy, you want to go first and Ralph second? Okay,
sure. I feel that I've served 4 years, and let me just go back real quick. I retired in 2018, and when I left there, the police department, I felt that my job wasn't done, and that's when I went up for police commission in 2019, and I won, and I continue to want to be a part of this commission because I care about this town. I care about our officers, and I care about what happens to this town. So I will fight, and I will fight as much as I can.
Perfect.
Whatever I can.
Let's give Ralph. I don't cut you off, but Ralph's got 30 seconds. Go ahead. I'm getting my director saying to go. Go ahead, Ralph.
Richfield is the safest town in America. Now, what's driven that, Bob? What's driven that has been three things. We've got a terrific police department we've talked about. The men and women of the department and its leadership are superb. Second, we have the community support, which we talked about earlier. But third, we also have policies and procedures as promulgated by the police commission. Maybe the boring part of what we're talking about, but it's those policies with special programs that drive community policing, projects that protect our most vulnerable, our young people and our seniors, protecting local business through security programs. This is what's made the difference, I think, by Izzy and myself in terms of contributing to being the safest community. It's those policies behind the scenes, the officers we've hired, the officers we have promoted, again, promoting the community programs.
Ralph, you get the last word. The director says it's time to go. Izzy and Ralph, I want to thank you both for coming on my show about the rule of law. You have great things to say about this town, and thank you for what you do for our community. This has been Bobby O. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.